The sun hung high in the cloudless sky, casting a golden glow over the palm-lined driveway of the exclusive Cascade Heights Resort. Nestled in the hills, overlooking a crystalline bay, the resort was famed for its secluded villas, meticulous service, and a clientele that often graced the covers of tabloids and business magazines. It was the perfect setting for Melania and Barron Trump's quiet getaway, a rare escape from the unrelenting spotlight. Melania, wearing a chic yet understated cream ensemble, stepped out of the sleek black SUV, followed by Barron, now towering over his mother. At 17, his calm demeanor mirrored hers, a quiet self-assurance that made their bond feel unshakable. They had chosen this retreat not for its opulence, though it was undeniable, but for the privacy it promised, a place to unwind, to reconnect, and to breathe without the constant hum of public scrutiny. The resort's glass doors slid open, revealing a lobby that radiated sophistication. Soft music played in the background as staff bustled about in silent efficiency. The air was infused with the faint scent of orchids, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the infinity pool merging seamlessly with the horizon. It was a sanctuary designed to make anyone feel like royalty. But as Melania and Barron approached the marble check-in counter, the warm ambience seemed to shift. The receptionist, a young woman with a polished smile, straightened her posture as if bracing herself. Her eyes flicked briefly to Barron's face, then to Melania's, before darting away. She greeted them politely, but with a tone that lacked the usual effusiveness reserved for high-profile guests. "Welcome to Cascade Heights," she said, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "May I have your name, please?" "Trump," Melania replied, her voice calm but firm. "We have a reservation for two." The receptionist hesitated, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. She cast a fleeting glance toward a man standing near the entrance, a tall figure in a sharp gray suit with a clipboard in hand. He nodded almost imperceptibly, and she resumed typing, her expression now a careful mask. As Melania signed the guest book, she noticed the sideways glances from a few other staff members, and even one or two guests in the lobby. Barron, who had grown adept at reading a room, shifted slightly, his sharp eyes catching the subtle unease around them. The receptionist handed them their confirmation papers with a tight smile. "Someone will be with you shortly to assist with your luggage." The polished veneer of Cascade Heights remained intact, but beneath it, a tension lingered, invisible yet unmistakable. For Melania and Barron, this was not their first brush with quiet resistance. They exchanged a knowing look, their unspoken understanding. This vacation might not go as smoothly as planned. Moments after settling into the plush seating area of the lobby, Melania and Barron noticed the man in the gray suit approach with purposeful strides. His face bore the carefully neutral expression of someone about to deliver unwelcome news. He stopped a respectful distance from them and inclined his head. "Mrs. Trump," he began, his voice smooth but clipped. "I'm Daniel Evans, the general manager here at Cascade Heights. I regret to inform you that due to an unforeseen scheduling conflict, we are unable to accommodate your reservation." Melania raised an eyebrow, her composure unbroken. "A scheduling conflict?" she repeated, her tone measured. "I was not informed of this prior to our arrival." Evans hesitated, his polished demeanor faltering slightly under her direct gaze. "We deeply apologize for the inconvenience," he said. "Unfortunately, we are at full capacity." Barron's sharp eyes flicked to the resort's large digital map behind the reception desk, which displayed the layout of the villas. Several remained unoccupied, their status lights blinking green. He leaned slightly toward his mother, whispering, "Those don't look booked." Melania followed his gaze, her expression softening only slightly as if to reassure him. She turned back to Evans, her voice calm but firm. "Your map shows vacant villas. Are you certain this is not a misunderstanding?" The manager stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Trump," he said carefully, "we have high-profile guests who prioritize privacy. It's a matter of ensuring their comfort." Melania tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. "I see. And does that same priority not extend to us?" Her question hung in the air like a quiet challenge, But Evans avoided her eyes, his professionalism masking what was clearly an uncomfortable position. "I'm afraid the policy is non-negotiable," he said, his voice firm now, as though trying to end the discussion. Barron, visibly disappointed but silent, stood up first. Melania followed, gathering her bag with a graceful motion that spoke volumes without a word. She turned to Evans, her expression cool but composed. "Thank you for your explanation." Without raising her voice or causing a scene, she walked toward the exit with Barron by her side. The doors closed behind them, leaving the lobby in a heavy silence. Several staff members exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the repercussions of the manager's decision. Outside, the California sun bathed the mother and son in its golden light. Barron adjusted his backpack, his expression clouded with quiet frustration. Melania placed a hand on his arm, her tone soothing. "We move forward with grace," she said softly, the weight of her words carrying a deeper lesson. As their car pulled away, the tension inside Cascade Heights remained, but Melania's quiet determination hinted that their story with the resort was far from over. The sleek black SUV pulled out of the circular driveway of Cascade Heights, its engine humming softly as it merged onto the winding road that led away from the exclusive resort. Barron sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window as the sun-drenched hills blurred past. His reflection in the glass revealed more than his expression. It captured the thoughts swirling in his mind. As they had exited the lobby moments earlier, Barron couldn't help but notice the subtle stares that followed them. The manager's forced professionalism and the staff's hushed whispers hadn't escaped his sharp observation. He had caught the way one waiter had nudged another, both glancing furtively in their direction. At one table near the window, a well-dressed couple exchanged pointed looks, clearly recognizing them. Though no words were spoken, the weight of judgment hung heavily in the air, palpable even in its silence. "Do they always look at us like that?" Barron asked, breaking the stillness inside the car. Melania, seated beside him, turned her head slightly. Her gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. "Not always, but often enough." Barron sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's like they don't see us as real people. Just a name, a headline." His mother didn't respond immediately, allowing the hum of the car and the rhythmic passing of roadside trees to fill the gap. Barron continued, his tone tinged with frustration but also curiosity. "Do you think it'll ever change? Or will we always be judged for things we didn't do?" Melania reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. Her touch was light but grounding. "People will always have opinions," she said. "Some will be kind, others not. But what matters is how we carry ourselves. Dignity and grace, Barron. They can never take that from you." Barron considered her words, his gaze drifting back to the window. The car passed a group of children playing in a park, their laughter audible even through the glass. He envied their carefree innocence, the freedom to exist without the burden of assumptions and expectations. "I just don't get it," he murmured. "Why judge someone without even knowing them?" Melania's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "It is easier to judge than to understand. But remember, how they see us as more about them than it does about us." The words lingered, settling into Barron's mind as a quiet reminder of his own strength. As the car reached their destination, the weight of the day began to ease. Barron resolved not to let the opinions of strangers dictate how he viewed himself or his family. By the time Melania and Barron reached home, the incident at Cascade Heights had already begun to ripple beyond the quiet walls of the resort. Unbeknownst to them, a fellow guest had snapped a photo of the two leaving the property and uploaded it to social media with a caption that read, "Barron and Melania Trump rejected at Cascade Heights? What's going on here?" Within hours, the post gained traction, reshared and commented on by influencers, political commentators, and curious followers. The image of Barron, tall and composed beside his mother, sparked a heated online debate that quickly spiraled out of control. Finally, a resort standing up for neutrality. "Kudos to Cascade Heights," one user wrote, their comment racking up thousands of likes. "Rejecting someone because of their name? That's discrimination, plain and simple," countered another. Opinion pieces began to surface, some defending the resort for enforcing its policies and maintaining a neutral space, while others lambasted the decision as thinly veiled bias. Hashtags like hashtag Trump rejected and hashtag dignity over drama trended simultaneously, reflecting the polarized views that dominated the conversation. Barron noticed the growing buzz as he scrolled through his phone later that evening. His expression tightened as he read the comments, some supportive, others brimming with vitriol. He turned the screen off abruptly, exhaling sharply. "People are going crazy over this," he said, placing his phone on the table. "It's like they don't even care about what really happened. They just want to pick a side." Melania glanced up from her book, her face serene despite the online storm. "That is the way of the world," she said simply. "People look for drama where there should be none." "Should we say something?" Barron asked. "Tell them the truth?" Melania shook her head. "No. Speaking out will only add fuel to the fire. Sometimes silence is the strongest statement we can make." Her decision to remain quiet wasn't out of indifference, but strategy. She understood the power of actions over words and the fleeting nature of social media controversies. While others debated endlessly, she focused on what truly mattered, turning the situation into a lesson, not just for Barron, but for anyone willing to listen. As the frenzy online continued to grow, Melania began making notes in a small journal. She jotted down ideas, reflecting on how the rejection at the resort could be transformed into an opportunity to promote grace and unity. In her calm and measured way, she prepared to show the world that strength wasn't in retaliation, but in building something meaningful from adversity. By the next morning, the headlines had intensified, but Melania and Barron remained steadfast, quietly crafting a plan that would soon take the narrative in a direction no one expected. As the online frenzy continued to swirl, Melania and Barron sat in their sunlit kitchen, the morning calm contrasting sharply with the storm of opinions dominating social media. While others debated the implications of their rejection at Cascade Heights, the two had already moved past the initial sting of the incident. Instead of dwelling on the slight, they were intent on turning it into something meaningful. "We should go back," Barron said suddenly, breaking the silence. He pushed his phone aside, its screen still lit with the latest trending hashtags. His voice carried a quiet resolve, not to make a scene, but to show them, and everyone else, that we're better than this. Melania looked up from her cup of tea, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "And what do you propose we do?" she asked, her tone calm yet curious. Barron hesitated for a moment, then continued. "What if we hosted an event? Something that brings people together, locals, guests, everyone. We could make it about unity, about helping the community." A faint smile crossed Melania's lips. "An interesting idea. Not revenge, but a statement of grace." She leaned forward slightly. "But it must be more than just an event. It should have purpose." Over the next few days, the plan began to take shape. They envisioned a charitable event that would focus on benefiting the local community, with proceeds going to underprivileged families in the area. The goal wasn't to address the resort directly, but to transform the narrative surrounding the incident into one of inclusion and positivity. Melania took the lead, her organizational skills honed from years of experience in the public eye. She reached out to trusted contacts, securing partnerships with local nonprofits and community leaders who shared their vision. Barron, eager to contribute, drafted a list of ideas for activities and invited his own network of young activists and influencers who were passionate about bridging divides. Invitations were carefully crafted, bearing an elegant design that reflected the tone of the event. Each one included a heartfelt message. "Join us for an evening of unity and community as we celebrate the power of kindness and collaboration." The invites were sent to a diverse array of recipients, local leaders, artists, youth organizations, and even the staff of Cascade Heights. The inclusion of the resort staff was intentional, a subtle olive branch to show that the event wasn't about division but reconciliation. As word of the event spread, curiosity grew. People were intrigued by the idea of Melania and Barron returning to the very place where they had been rejected. Social media buzzed with speculation about what the event would entail and how the resort would respond. Yet, through it all, Melania and Barron remained focused on their goal, to create a space where unity, could flourish, even in the face of past misunderstandings. The days leading up to the event were a whirlwind of activity. Melania and Barron worked tirelessly, ensuring every detail was accounted for. The vision they had set was clear. This wouldn't just be another fundraiser. It would be an experience that fostered dialogue, understanding, and collaboration across divides. Barron, inspired by his own reflections on judgment and bias, suggested incorporating activities that encouraged meaningful conversations. What if we had panels or small group discussions, he proposed during a planning meeting. Something where people can share their perspectives without feeling judged. Melania nodded in agreement. A wonderful idea, she said. It will show that unity begins with listening. They decided to feature booths run by local artists and small businesses, showcasing the rich culture and talent of the surrounding community. Live performances were planned, including music from a local jazz band and a spoken-word poet whose work centered on themes of connection and empathy. A mural wall was also set up, inviting attendees to contribute their thoughts and messages of hope, creating a visual representation of the event's mission. Youth organizations were invited to set up mentorship programs and workshops, aimed at empowering the next generation to lead with kindness and understanding. Barron took a particular interest in this aspect, meeting with young leaders to ensure their voices would be central to the event. As preparations unfolded, Melania's quiet leadership earned admiration from everyone involved. She coordinated logistics with ease, ensuring that every participant felt valued and heard. Meanwhile, Barron's active involvement surprised and impressed many. He wasn't just the son of a former president. He was a thoughtful, determined young man eager to make a difference. The venue itself, an open area just outside Cascade Heights, was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, bearing messages like "United we thrive" and "Kindness knows no boundaries." Tables were arranged with care, each adorned with fresh flowers and informational pamphlets about the charities being supported. As the day of the event approached, the buzz around it reached new heights. Social media lit up with posts speculating about the turnout and impact of the gathering. Even those who had initially criticized the Trumps began to express admiration for their efforts. Through it all, Melania and Barron stayed focused, their resolve unwavering. They weren't seeking vindication or applause. Their goal was simple yet profound: to remind the world that, even in moments of division, there was always a path to unity. When the sun rose on the morning of the event, the stage was set, not just for a fundraiser, but for a moment that would redefine the narrative and leave an indelible mark on everyone who attended. The warm California sun bathed the luxurious grounds of Cascade Heights as the black SUV carrying Melania and Barron Trump rolled through the gates. This time, the air was charged with anticipation rather than tension. The resort's sprawling lawns had been transformed into a vibrant scene of preparation, with staff and volunteers bustling to put the finishing touches on the event. As Melania and Barron stepped out of the vehicle, they were greeted by a mix of curious glances and uneasy smiles. Staff members, many of whom remembered the tension of their first visit, exchanged uncertain looks. A few guests lingered near the entrance, openly watching, their expressions a blend of intrigue and skepticism. Melania, dressed in an elegant but understated white ensemble, nodded politely to the staff as she walked toward the venue. Beside her, Barron, tall and composed, carried himself with quiet confidence. His demeanor mirrored his mother's, poised, calm, and resolute. The manager, Daniel Evans, stood near the entrance, his clipboard clutched tightly in his hands. His usual polished confidence seemed to waver as he watched the Trumps approach. This wasn't how he had envisioned their return, and the magnitude of the event unfolding on his resort grounds only heightened his unease. He nodded stiffly as Melania and Barron passed, his eyes betraying a mix of apprehension and grudging respect. The event space was a flurry of activity. Booths displaying local art and handmade goods lined the pathways, and tables were set with donation boxes for various charities. A small stage had been erected at the center, adorned with a banner that read, "Building bridges, not walls." As the event began, the atmosphere was tentative. Some guests approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Others lingered on the sidelines, their skepticism evident. Yet, as the hours passed, the energy started to shift. The thoughtful design of the event, its inclusivity, the focus on local talent, and the warm welcome offered by Melania and Barron began to win people over. A live jazz band filled the air with soulful melodies, and children laughed as they painted on a communal mural. Volunteers from local youth organizations led workshops, and attendees found themselves drawn into conversations that felt genuine and meaningful. The staff of Cascade Heights, initially hesitant, started to participate. A few waiters wandered over to the art booths, while others helped guide guests to different activities. Even Daniel Evans, though still observing from a distance, couldn't deny the growing sense of camaraderie and goodwill that seemed to envelop the event. By the time the sun began to set, the unease that had marked Melania and Barron's arrival was replaced with something far more powerful, a shared sense of purpose. The event was no longer about the Trumps or the resort. It was about the community and the connections being forged on its grounds. As the evening unfolded, the heart of the event came into focus. The stage, now illuminated by soft golden lights, became the centerpiece of the gathering. Attendees gathered in front of it, their conversations quieting as the first speaker took the microphone. Local leaders, artists, and activists shared their stories, each emphasizing the importance of unity and understanding. A spoken-word poet performed a piece about breaking down walls, literal and metaphorical, earning applause and even a few tears from the audience. Finally, Barron stepped onto the stage. The crowd fell silent, their attention fixed on the young man who had become the unexpected face of the event. He stood tall, his expression earnest as he looked out at the audience. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today isn't about me, or my family, or even this resort. It's about something much bigger. It's about proving that no matter our differences, we can always find common ground." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "When my mother and I were turned away from this resort, it hurt. Not because of who we are, but because it reminded me how easy it is to judge people without truly knowing them. But instead of holding on to that pain, we chose to do something different. We chose to turn it into an opportunity." Barron's words carried a weight beyond his years, his sincerity resonating with the crowd. He spoke about the dangers of bias and how it can blind people to the humanity in others. "We all make mistakes," he said, glancing toward Daniel Evans, who stood near the back of the crowd. "What matters is how we grow from them." As he finished his speech, the audience erupted into applause. Barron stepped down from the stage, shaking hands with attendees and thanking them personally for their support. His heartfelt message had struck a chord, and the crowd's admiration was palpable. Throughout the evening, the divide that had once seemed insurmountable began to dissolve. Guests who had initially supported the resort's rejection of the Trumps now approached them with newfound respect. Conversations flowed more easily, and even Daniel Evans found himself drawn into discussions with attendees, his initial reservations giving way to reflection. By the end of the night, it was clear that the event had succeeded in more ways than one. It wasn't just a fundraiser or a public gesture. It was a moment of transformation, a reminder that even in the face of division, understanding and kindness could prevail. As the final notes of the jazz band faded into the evening air, Melania and Barron stood at the edge of the venue, watching as the crowd slowly dispersed. The smiles, the laughter, and the sense of connection were proof that their efforts had made a difference. For the first time in days, the tension of the initial rejection felt like a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of reconciliation and hope. As the final guests began to trickle out of the event, the atmosphere at Cascade Heights shifted from vibrant celebration to reflective calm. Melania and Barron stood near the edge of the venue, thanking volunteers and staff members who had helped bring their vision to life. The success of the day was undeniable, yet their demeanor remained humble and gracious. Nearby, Daniel Evans, the resort manager, lingered uncertainly. For most of the evening, he had observed the proceedings from the sidelines, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The event's success was undeniable, as was the genuine warmth it had fostered among guests, staff, and the community. It was a stark contrast to the tension of Melania and Barron's initial visit, a tension he now regretted having contributed to. Taking a deep breath, Daniel approached them, his polished professionalism giving way to something more vulnerable. As he neared, Melania turned to him, her expression calm and welcoming. Barron, standing beside her, watched silently, his presence steady and composed. "Mrs. Trump, Barron," Daniel began, his voice quieter than usual. "I'd like to speak with you, if you'll allow me." Melania nodded graciously. "Of course." Daniel hesitated for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I want to apologize," he said finally, his tone laced with sincerity. "The way you were treated during your first visit, it wasn't right. I thought I was upholding our policies, but in doing so, I let my own biases cloud my judgment." Melania studied him for a moment, her expression soft yet thoughtful. "It takes courage to admit when we're wrong," she said gently. "Thank you for your honesty." Daniel exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Watching what you've done here today, it's opened my eyes. You didn't have to come back, let alone turn this into something so meaningful. But you did, and it's had an impact on everyone, myself included." Melania's lips curved into a faint smile. "Our goal was never retribution," she said. "We wanted to show that even difficult moments can lead to something positive. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about learning, growing, and coming together." Her words carried a weight that Daniel couldn't ignore. He nodded, deeply moved. "I'd like to contribute to this cause," he said after a moment. "I've decided that a portion of the resort's profits will be donated to the charities you've partnered with. It's the least we can do to support what you've started." Barron, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "That's a great step," he said, his tone sincere. "It shows that change is possible, even when it's uncomfortable." Daniel extended a hand, which Melania accepted with a graceful nod. Barron followed suit, his handshake firm yet unassuming. In that moment, the tension that had defined their relationship dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding and mutual respect. As Daniel walked away, Melania turned to Barron, her eyes reflecting a quiet pride. "This is what it's about," she said softly, turning conflict into connection. As the final guest departed and the lights of the event dimmed, the grounds of Cascade Heights fell quiet once more. The energy of the day lingered, though, an invisible warmth that seemed to permeate the air. Volunteers packed up tables, musicians loaded their instruments, and staff moved with a renewed sense of purpose, their earlier unease replaced by a quiet camaraderie. Melania and Barron chose to leave as they had arrived, without fanfare or spectacle. They thanked the remaining volunteers, offered kind words to the staff, and walked toward their waiting car. The sun had long since set, and the night sky was dotted with stars, casting a serene glow over the resort. Inside the car, Barron looked out the window, watching the lights of the event fade into the distance. "Do you think it made a difference?" he asked quietly. Melania glanced at him, her expression serene. "It already has," she said. "Sometimes the impact isn't immediate, but seeds of change have been planted today. They'll grow in ways we can't yet see." As they returned home, the ripples of their actions began to spread far beyond the resort. Social media buzzed with posts from attendees, praising the event's message of unity and inclusion. Photos of the mural, the speeches, and the community coming together filled timelines, accompanied by captions like "a lesson in grace" and "building bridges, not walls." News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a tale of transformation and redemption. Commentators who had once criticized the Trumps found themselves admiring their approach, acknowledging that they had chosen the high road in the face of adversity. The funds raised during the event exceeded expectations, benefiting local charities and organizations that provided education, mentorship, and support to underprivileged families. But beyond the monetary contributions, the event left a lasting impression on those who attended. It became a symbol of what was possible when differences were set aside in favor of understanding and collaboration. For the staff and management of Cascade Heights, the day marked a turning point. Policies were revisited, and efforts were made to foster a culture of inclusion and respect. Daniel Evans, in particular, became a vocal advocate for creating spaces where all guests felt welcome, his own transformation serving as a testament to the event's impact. Months later, the story of the Trumps' return to Cascade Heights continued to resonate. It was retold in articles, interviews, and even community forums, inspiring others to reflect on their own biases and how they could contribute to positive change. For Melania and Barron, the incident that had begun as a moment of rejection became something far greater, a reminder that grace, humility, and resilience held the power to transform even the most challenging circumstances into opportunities for growth. And while they left the spotlight behind, the message they had championed remained, echoing far beyond the grounds of a single resort. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even more brutal.